So recall that in the last class we had looked at a particular attack called the double spend attack. So here what the attacker did was he allowed the honest miners to create a chain of some length, and in one of the blocks was a particular transaction. Let's say that the attacker had himself made that transaction, and what he wanted to do is he wanted to spend the same Bitcoin twice. So he created an alternate chain which started from the parent of this block which had the transaction, and at some point in time he released this chain which was longer than the honest chain, and he orphaned this chain. So that got rid of this transaction 2 and at the same as transaction 1, and instead of that he included transaction 2 in this chain, and both of them spent money from the same particular UTXO. There was some transaction which was taking, and the transaction 1 was taking input from there. So at the same time, transaction 2 was taking from that same input. So obviously transaction 1 and transaction 2 couldn't get into the same chain because Bitcoin rules would not allow that. But this is fine. I mean, transaction 1 has been removed, so there's no problem in transaction 2 spending from this UTXO. Right? So once transaction 2 has got into the blockchain, now transaction 1 has no chance of getting into the same blockchain. So effectively what the attacker managed to do was he kept this chain secret, this private chain, and he let the honest person, or the honest miner, generate a long enough chain. So let's say the shopkeeper who accepted this transaction waited for only 4 confirmation. So this is the 4th confirmation. Okay, so he kept it secret till that point. He got some goods from the shopkeeper, and then he released the longer chain and killed this previous honest chain. Okay. So the analysis we did was to try to find out how secure these confirmations are. If I wait for 1 confirmation or 2 confirmations or 3 confirmations, so we said we'll wait for some S number of confirmations, and we wanted to see how secure that is. So we did some analysis. We used ideas from Poisson processes. We especially used the memoryless property of Poisson processes, and we did some analysis, and we said what is the chance that the attacker will be able to succeed in this sort of an attack. Right? So it became a bit tricky because when you reach this Sth confirmation, maybe the attacker is behind you, but maybe he's already generated a longer chain, maybe he's ahead. So we had to take that into account. And Satoshi did most of the analysis for us, and of course it was simplified and made more accurate by Manny Rosenfeld, and we did that analysis too. So this was the double spend attack which Satoshi had very thoughtfully contemplated and analyzed. But is it the only attack possible in a Bitcoin-like system? Right? So security is always a very, very tricky subject. So unlike most other subjects in engineering and science, which deal with just inanimate objects, right, where the laws of physics and chemistry hold, right, and that's what we have to deal with, right? And basic logic and some sort of theories of science can help us figure things out. Security is a difficult subject because you have intelligent adversaries. So it makes security very, very challenging. I mean, unlike other science subjects or engineering subjects where you're pretty much dealing only with laws of physics and chemistry, here you're dealing with intelligent adversary. So an intelligent adversary is not really restricted in any way. I mean, he could do anything pretty much, right? So making a system secure to an intelligent adversary is non-trivial. In fact, it may be impossible. So what we typically assume is that in security analysis, we restrict this intelligent adversary in some way. We say that he is only allowed to do X, Y, and Z, and then we try to analyze the system. And in reality, if he's able to go beyond what we've assumed that he can do, then he could launch some attack which might be successful, right? So, for example, if you look at 9/11, the 9/11 attack in 2001, so the US government had probably not thought of such an attack, right? They had the strongest military in the world by any stretch of imagination. I mean, they could have dealt with any navy, any air force, any missile system which came against them. But they were still unsuccessful against the 9/11 attacks just because the attackers had thought so much out of the box that they came up with a new attack which the US government was totally unprepared for. Right? So in any security system, that is the situation. You think, what might the adversary do? What is he capable of doing? And you try to make your system secure to that. But maybe there is some attack you had not thought of, and he might succeed in that. Right? So Satoshi, of course, had thought of a double spend attack, and he showed that under certain circumstances, of course, he had assumed network delays was zero in his analysis, that if you wait for a certain number of confirmations with high probability, you are secure against this double spend attack. You wait for 6 confirmations, he said, with only probability 10 to the power of -3, somebody is going to succeed in this double spend attack, provided he has 10% of the hashing power in the network. Okay. Of course, if he has less than 10%, then the chances of his succeeding are even lower. If he has more than 10%, then of course the chances of his succeeding are going to be much higher than 10 to the power of -3. Right? But of course, Satoshi did the analysis so that you could plug in whatever hashing power you thought the attacker might have, and you could find out what's the probability of his succeeding. Okay. So Satoshi just built the system and put it out, and it seemed to work pretty well, right? And for years and years, I mean, Bitcoin was doing great, and nobody really was able to bring down the Bitcoin system. So the attacks that took place were not on the consensus algorithm, they were more on something else, things like people losing their keys, their private keys. So there was an attack, I think it was called Mount Gox attack, GOX. And the term used is to get goxed. Okay. So this had nothing to do with Satoshi's protocol, but see, ordinary folks like you and me, maybe we are not comfortable keeping a private key somewhere, right? So our Bitcoin is essentially linked to the public key. Okay, so actually it's a function of the public key. I haven't given all the details, but effectively your public key, your Bitcoin in the blockchain is linked to your public key. Right, and if you want to spend this Bitcoin, you have to have a private key, and this, of course, you have to keep secure and secret somewhere. Right, so many people are sort of uncomfortable with this, so they might keep their private key with some other party, some sort of trusted party. right? And so usually there are exchanges, and so for example, Mt. Gox, there was this big Bitcoin exchange where you want to buy and sell your Bitcoin. So many people had left their private keys with Mt. Gox, and it was assumed to be kept secure, right? So Mt. Gox said you leave your private key with us, or you know, in some way. I mean, and they had not kept those private keys in a very secure fashion. So ideally, what the company should do is they shouldn't keep the raw private key. They should have an encrypted form of the private key, and maybe only the user's password should be able to decrypt that. Okay, so that as long as the person is not logged in, let's say, nobody will be able to crack the private key because there's only the encrypted version. But for some reason they had not kept this private key very secure, right? And somebody was able to hack in and was able to steal a lot of Bitcoin because they were able to figure out what the private keys are of people who were using Mt. Gox. Okay, so if you're unlucky enough to keep your private key somewhere on some website, and they get hacked into and your private key is stolen, the term to use is getting goxed. Okay, so none of us want to get goxed, and ideally what you should do with your private key is you should not put it anywhere, not put it on the internet or anywhere else. Maybe write it on a piece of paper in such a way that nobody else will understand what you're writing, and store it somewhere safely, right? But of course, people nowadays might entrust their private key to some company, a well-known company, and like maybe Coinbase or something like that, and they would of course keep only an encrypted version of the private key, so that even if they are hacked into, that person will never be able to recover the private key. And every time you want to use your private key to, let's say, spend some of your Bitcoin using their software, you would have to type in a special password for your system, and that would decrypt the private key just for that short period of time. Okay, so these were the sort of attacks which took place. Mt. Gox, it was nothing, nobody was able to break proof of work as it is, and in fact people haven't really been able to do it for this long. Right? So of course we don't know that it is completely secure. Maybe somebody will come up with an attack tomorrow or day after. Right? But people were thinking, what else is possible beyond this double spend attack? Other attacks possible? And indeed, something called selfish mining was thought of. And that's what we're going to study today. So what is selfish mining? So normally when somebody generates a block, what does he do? Suppose this is the current state of the blockchain. Let's say I'm a miner, I'm mining here. If I generate a block, I immediately release it into the network. And you might think, why should I immediately release it? Why? What's the incentive to do that? Well, because if I withhold my block and somebody else generates a block and he releases his block, then everybody starts mining on his block. Right? And if everybody mines on his block, even then if I release my block, we said that the rule is, what honest miners are going to do is they are going to mine on the first block which they saw. If there are two equal chains and everybody is going to mine on the first block that he saw, so they would mine on this one. So effectively this chain would increase and then my block would get orphaned. So if I am a rational miner, I would release my block immediately so that it gets to everybody before any other competing block, and other people mine on my block. Okay? So the question is, but are there situations where maybe if I'm a rational miner, maybe I wouldn't want to release my block for some reason, and that is called selfish mining. So in selfish mining, I don't release my block immediately. and I just withhold it for some time. Okay, and so the idea is that you're sort of selfish about your block, you don't share it with anybody, right? So you just keep it to yourself and you keep mining on your own block. You keep generating a private chain, something like in the Satoshi's attack situation, his double spend attack. But here the goal is a bit different. You're not trying to do a double spend. Here the goal is that you selfishly mine, you create this private chain, and your goal is to eventually get more of your own blocks in the chain. So don't release your block immediately. So you create a private chain, and the goal is to get more fraction of blocks in the chain than your fraction of hashing power. Than the hashing power. Let's say then the fraction of hashing power that the attacker possesses. Okay, so if the attacker was honest and he released his blocks immediately, and let's say that he had P fraction of hashing power, well, I think the paper we'll discuss will use alpha, so let's just stick to that. So let's say we have alpha as the fraction of mining power. So I'm using mining power and hashing power interchangeably. Okay, so the attacker says that I have alpha fraction of the hashing power, let's say 20%. And if I'm honest and I follow the rules, then I get 20% of the blocks in the chain. And that gives me a certain reward, right, per unit time. But suppose I hide my chain, I don't release it, I do selfish mining. Can I get more than alpha fraction of the blocks in the chain? And that way I get a higher mining reward per unit time. Okay. So this is a selfish mining attack, and people showed that in fact such attacks are possible. Okay, and but of course it turns out that you need to have a reasonable amount of hashing power in order to actually get a higher reward. You can't, suppose you have, let's say, 2% of the mining power, then if you try to delay or withhold your blocks, you're not going to make more money. Right? You'll actually lose money if you do this sort of an attack. But if you have, let's say, 35%, then you can actually make more money. So this selfish mining attacks were analyzed, and around the time frame of 2015 or so, there were several papers about this. So we look at a paper called "Majority is Not Enough." By Eyal and Sirer. So it came out around 2015, roughly around that time, around 2014, 2015. So Gun Sirer is a professor at Cornell. Eyal, I believe he's a professor somewhere in Israel. Anyway, but the thing is that people thought that 51% attack is the main thing you have to worry about. If somebody has more than the majority of the hashing power, then he's going to destroy the system. And of course, and the thoughts of the honest people have majority of the hashing power, that's enough. Mostly the system is secure. And the selfish mining attack showed that even if the honest have majority of the hashing power, still there are attacks possible. It doesn't bring down the system, but still it's unfair. meaning that somebody with an honest miner who has a certain fraction of the hashing power may not actually get mining rewards proportionate to that. So how is the attack going to work out? Okay, so let's say that let's call attackers A, and let's say that the honest miners, let's say we are going to denote, let's say they're blocks by B. So what is the strategy of the attacker? So let's say that there was a particular block. Let's say this is the previous block, which was known to all. Okay, so this was the previous block which all were mining on. Okay, so in certain situations this might have been created by the attacker, or it might have been created by the honest miner. But this is, let's say this block was publicly shared to everybody and everybody is mining on it. Now let's say that let's say it's a straightforward case where the honest people create the block. Okay. So in this situation, the attacker shifts to mining on this new block. Okay. So everybody shifts to mining here. Okay, so what is the reward, let's say, that this particular the honest miners get? Well, they get a reward of 1. So we are just saying, let's say that the mining reward is 1 unit which you get per block which gets into the chain. Okay. So here the honest people get reward 1 in this particular situation because their block gets into the chain. So now let's move on to the more interesting cases. So let's say this is the block which everybody happened to be mining on, and let's say that the attacker creates a block. So he does a selfish mining attack, he keeps it secret, he doesn't reveal it. And then what might happen? So maybe the honest people will generate a block and they will of course reveal it immediately. So in this situation, so I'll just say that this was first generated and this was next generated in this situation. So the attacker panics because the honest people have generated a block, they broadcast it. So he immediately broadcasts this. Okay, so B is this block has been broadcast. So this block is also broadcast. And now it depends on the networks. So this block is going to take some time to reach everybody. This block is going to take some time to reach everybody, right? And so it's possible that some of the honest miners might receive the attacker's block before this honest block, right? Because there are lots of different miners. Maybe one miner, the person who created this miner may be in China, and maybe somebody who's mining in the US didn't receive it immediately, and maybe he got the attacker's block earlier, right? So in this situation, it's a bit tricky. So how many people are going to mine on this? So let's say the attacker is 1, he's unified. So the entire attacker's hashing power alpha is on this. Okay? And let's say that a certain fraction of the honest miners receive this block earlier, let's call it gamma, and they start mining on this block. So 1 minus gamma of a fraction of the honest miners have received this block first, so they are mining up. Okay, so this is the fraction of mining power on this block, this is the fraction of mining power on this block. Okay, so just to be clear what gamma is the fraction of honest mining power which is mining on the attacker's block. Because it got that block first before this honest block. Okay? And now what's going to happen? This is a game now, it's a race to the finish. And it's possible that there are different possibilities. So one is that let's say an honest block is created here, okay? Or it's possible that an attacker's block was created here, okay? Or it's possible that an honest block was created here. Okay, so only one of these three takes place in our analysis, and let's say that whichever one is created, it's declared the winner, right? So if everybody mines on this block, right? So if this block is created, for example, in this case the honest miners have got 2 blocks in the chain. So let's say the honest reward becomes 2 over here because both blocks get into the chain. Okay. And everybody starts mining on this block. So I'll just say all start mining. Okay. In this situation, again all start mining here, honest and attackers mine on this. Okay, so effectively this becomes the previous block which I've shown in this situation. Okay. And so let's talk about the reward here. So the honest reward is 1. They've got 1 block into the chain. And the attacker's block has also got into the chain. So let's say the attacker's reward is 1 over here. Okay, so they've each got 1 block in the chain. What about here? So all mine over here, and so the attacker has got a reward of 2. And this, let's say, so this in this particular situation, and in fact in both of these situations, the honest block, this particular honest block has been killed, the top honest block. And that block effectively doesn't get any reward because it's not in the longest chain. Okay, so you can see that there is some trade-off over here, that in some situations you are able to reduce the honest blocks getting into the chain. Okay, so in this, if this lower chain wins, then this block is killed. But of course there's a trade-off that maybe this block actually wins and then the attacker's block is out of business. Right? The attacker, this block, if this happens first, that block is created, then the attacker's block gets killed and he loses out. Okay? So there's a little bit of danger in doing this selfish mining attack, that your block might get killed also. Okay? That has to be taken into account. Okay, so these are, the first case was straightforward where the honest miner generates a block. Second became a little bit challenging because there was a race to a finish and there were 3 possible cases. Okay, each chances of each winning will be depending upon these probabilities, right? So probability of this block getting created would be this probability which I have shown here. but probability of, let's say, this one getting created or this one getting created would depend, right? It would depend on these factors shown over here. Okay. So what else might happen? So there's a situation actually where the attacker is guaranteed to win. So let's say that this is the block which is sort of been shown, this is the block which has been broadcast, and let's say that the attacker has created a block, and this is all private, this is all he's selfishly mining on his own chain, he's not shared his blocks, and now he's got an unassailable 2-block lead. So now he knows that the honest miners might generate a block here, but really there is no competition because he's 2 blocks ahead. He can just release both his blocks and just kill the honest chain. Okay. So if this happens, then if exactly this situation happens, this is the first block, this is the second block, and this is the third block, then he releases both his blocks and kills this one. Okay, so the basic point here is that if he takes a lead of 2, let's say 2 or more, his strategy is going to be the following. He waits till the lead becomes 1, and then he releases all his entire private chain. Okay. So in this situation, of course, he got a lead of 2 and then the lead immediately became 1, so he released the entire chain. But there could be other situations too. So let's look at that. So let's say this is the block they were both mining on and the attacker generated his chain. Let's say he was several blocks ahead. Let's say he was 4 blocks ahead. And then the honest generated 1, 2. Okay, so let's say this is the order in which they are generated. So he's still 2 ahead, so he still keeps it private. And let's say he generated another 2 blocks. So he's got totally 6 blocks. And let's say that the honest generated a few blocks. And here let's say that the honest people managed to catch up to 1 block behind. So now the honest people have caught up to 1 block behind, and now the attacker panics, right? He doesn't want the honest chain to become equal in length, because then even if he releases his chain, there's competition. Maybe his whole chain might get killed, you know, that if somebody generates a block on the honest one. So he plays safe. So now the gap is 1. So he releases the chain. He releases his private chain and he kills this entire honest chain. So the entire honest chain gets orphaned. Okay, so this chain, let's say, is broadcast, everybody gets it, and they see that it's longer than this one, so they mine on this. Okay. So in this sort of a situation, he's gained a lot. He's managed to kill a number of honest blocks, right? So his fraction of blocks in the chain are going to go up. Okay. So this is really where he's making more money than let's say he would otherwise if he was behaving honestly. He's killing more and more honest blocks in this situation. Right? Once he's got a lead of 2, he doesn't immediately broadcast the chain. He keeps mining on his own private chain, and only when the honest miners catch up to 1 behind him, that's when he releases his full chain and kills the honest chain. Okay? So the longer his private chain becomes here, the longer he is able to, so you can say the more honest blocks he manages to kill. Okay? So let's calculate how many, in this sort of situation, how many of his blocks over here get in. So let's just write that. So for each of these blocks, all of these blocks get into the main chain. So let's just say that each attacker block gets reward 1 because it gets into the final chain. Okay, so in this situation where he has a lead of 2, every single one of his blocks is going to get into the chain, unlike this earlier situation where things were a bit tricky. Okay, so this is the situation where we have a lead of 2. Okay, so 2 or more in fact. And what about these blocks, honest blocks, do they get any reward? And in fact they don't get any reward, they don't get into the chain. So in the situation where it was 1 each and they were competing, this could get some reward. There was a chance of this honest miner getting a reward. But in the situation where he has a lead of 2, none of these honest blocks get any reward. Okay. So what is going to happen in practice in this sort of situation? So this is the attacker's game. This is what he's going to do. These are the various scenarios. And we will do a little bit of analysis to see how much reward he gets. But in practice, is he really going to get more of a reward? Because if you think about it, if he was honest, every block that he generated was getting into the chain. Right? And so every block got a reward. Here, at least in this third scenario that we looked at, all his blocks are getting rewards, but some of his blocks get killed. Like in this scenario, his block might get killed. So is he really making more money? Because fewer of his blocks are getting into the chain with this attack than if he was honest. Okay, so it seems counterintuitive. Why do this attack at all? Who cares what the honest miners are getting? I should care about my own reward, right? So previously, let's say 10 blocks, let's say if I was honest, 10 of my blocks were getting in a particular unit of time. Now I will be only getting less than that in this particular attack. Maybe the honest miners, instead of getting 10 blocks, are getting 5. But who cares? Because I am getting a certain Bitcoin reward per block. So does it make sense to do this sort of attack? So something tricky is happening over here, and that has to do with the threshold adjustment. So let's say that, let's look at a certain scenario. So let's say that these were the honest blocks, and let's say that the attacker was generating some blocks over here. So all of these get killed in this particular situation. Okay, and these blocks get in. And let's say, of course, there was an honest block here, and let's say that there happened to be a fork over here. But let's say this happened, this was the longest chain and it continued. So the attackers, this particular attacker's block got killed. And So what I'm trying to say is this attack actually beneficial, because some of the attacker's blocks are not getting in, whereas if he had been honest and not done selfish mining, all of these blocks would have gotten. So let's say that there was this situation. Let's say he released all his blocks. Let's say that all were honest, and let's say he had a lead. Let's say a lead of 3. Let's say that he generated 4 to make it simple, and then there were 3 blocks generated, and then and then let's say that attacker generated a block. Of course, here he's being honest and releasing all the blocks. So this would have been the situation, and I think there was an extra one I needed to show here. Okay, so let's say that there was one more over here. So in this particular situation, so here he was launching the attack and he got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 blocks into the chain, right? And here he got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 blocks into the chain, right? And so let's just say that the attacker got 6 here and the honest got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7. And here the attacker got 5 and the honest got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. No, sorry, I beg your pardon. He only got 3. So here he has got only these 3 into the chain. Okay. So my point is that you get a certain Bitcoin per block that you mine, right? That's the mining reward. And here the attacker gets 6, here he gets 5. And of course he's killed a lot of honest blocks, but is that beneficial to him? Right? Because overall he's getting more Bitcoin in this case. Okay? So the situation actually happens to be a little bit trickier because Bitcoin ensures that the average time between blocks is always 10 minutes. So here, of course, in this situation, there was a particular threshold which was used to generate blocks every 10 minutes. So let's say that the target threshold is some T2, some threshold. Here the threshold is not going to be the same because some blocks get killed because of this attack, right? So just look, if you look at these 2 examples, here you have 13 blocks, here you have only 8 blocks, right? So 5 blocks have been killed over here because of this attack, right? So what would happen in this situation in the attack? The target would change to become some T1 to ensure that the average time between blocks is 10 minutes even in this case. Okay. So what we should actually do while viewing this situation, we should actually think that this target is higher than this case. So T1 has to be greater than T2, just so that blocks are generated more frequently, so that on average you have 10 blocks which get into the chain, right? On average you have a block getting into the chain every 10 minutes. Okay? So what we do effectively is we look at this longest chain, we leave out all these blocks which were killed, right? And for this longest chain, we look at 2016 blocks and look at the average time there, right? And we see that on average we should have 1 block generated every 10 minutes. So target T1 has to be greater than T2 because here not all blocks get into the chain in the first case. some of them get killed because of the attack. Some attacker blocks get removed, some honest blocks get removed. So you need to generate more blocks. The generation rate of blocks should be higher than 1 every 10 minutes. Okay, because some of them don't get into the chain. So that if you look at blocks which get into the chain, on average, those blocks should be generated every 10 minutes. Okay, so here a good fraction in this particular example, you've seen a good fraction of blocks have been killed. Okay, so automatically Satoshi's algorithm is going to adjust this threshold so that if you look at 2016 blocks in the chain, they are generated on average every 10 minutes. Okay. So T1 gets adjusted in order that on average one block is generated every 10 minutes in this accepted chain in the net. Okay. So is the attack really succeeding? And in fact you see it does, because what we should look at is the fraction of attackers' blocks in the chain rather than just looking at the total number of blocks which he generates and seeing how many of those get into the chain. So what we want to look at is A divided by A plus H, and we want to see if that is going up. Okay, because that will get rid of all the blocks which don't get into the chain. We just want to look at the main chain and we want to see what is the fraction of those blocks which are attackers blocks. Okay. And in this case, of course, we have 5 divided by 8, right? And in this particular case, what fraction of attackers blocks get into the chain? Well, all blocks get into the chain, so it's going to be 6 by 13. Okay. So we see that the attacker has increased his fractions of blocks in the main chain by performing this attack. Okay, so even though if you look at total number of attacker blocks, then here all of them 100% get into the chain. In this situation, during the attack, only a subset of them get in. It may be, let's say, 80% or 90%. But still he's making more money per unit time, okay, because of this adjustment of the threshold. Okay, so let's say there are 2016 blocks generated every 2 weeks in both cases in the main chain, and let's say that this is the final fraction of attacker blocks to attacker plus honest blocks which get into the chain. So he is going to get this many fractions of blocks. So let's say that he is going to get 5 by 18 times 2016 blocks every 2 weeks. And in this situation, he is going to get 6 by 13 times 2016 blocks every 2 weeks. Okay. So the attack is actually helping him get more money per unit time. Okay, though a smaller fraction of the blocks that he generates actually gets into the main chain. Okay. So this is how the attack works, and we have to analyze and see, and we have to sort of try to calculate what these ratios are. Okay, so here in this particular example, I just showed one possibility, and I'm saying 5 over 8. But in practice, how much does he really get? Okay, so what we know is that he has alpha fraction of the hashing power, right? And we have in that special case, we said that gamma fraction of the honest miners mine on the attacker's block. Okay, when they're just a single block or fork of length 1, and one of the blocks is going to win. Okay. So let's see. So in this situation, so we've looked at different situations. So we said here the honest miner is getting a reward of 1. His block gets in. Here he gets reward depending on who wins. So in case he generates a block, he gets a reward of 2 over here, but he gets that reward only in the case this situation happens, which happens with this probability. Okay. And there are other situations too. we might end up with this situation or this one. Each has its particular probability of occurring, and in this top case, the attacker and the honest miners get reward 1 each, and in this third case, attacker gets reward of 2. And the situation where the attacker always wins, where he has a lead of 2, all his blocks get into the chain, and all the honest blocks get killed until the honest blocks catch up to 1 behind. So we have to analyze this situation, and we want to see what is the total reward, what is A divided by A plus H, right? That's what we want to calculate, and we want to see when is it really beneficial for the attacker to perform this attack. Okay. So Sirar and Eyal did the analysis for us. So here is how they analyzed it, and they used a Markov chain. So the random walk we studied in the earlier class was also, you can also model it as a Markov chain. Okay, and of course here we have a slightly more complicated Markov chain, but these are again analyzed for, decades, and in fact maybe more than a century even, right? Over 100 years. So the analysis, the tools are available to us, and they made good use of it. Okay. So essentially what I'm going to draw is I'm going to draw various states of the Markov chain, and the state refers to the lead that the attacker has. So if we go look at this situation, so when there is just both of them are mining on this particular block, the lead is 0, and then one of them wins. Okay. In this situation, the attacker has already created one block, so his lead is 1, but then the lead has become 0, right? And then they are trying to compete. So we are going to denote this with a special state called 0 dash. Okay, so I'll just write that down. So let's say that the state when both are mining is 0, and in this situation the state is 1, but when the honest miners catch up, we are going to give a special number for that. We'll call it 0 dash in this particular case. Okay, and what's going to happen here, if the honest miners generate a block, then we go back to state 0, right? Because both will be mining on this. Okay. And in this situation, okay, if we get a block here, if the honest miners get a block here, again everybody is mining on the same block, so we go to 0, right? And in the last case also, when attacker generates a block, everybody shifts to mining on this attacker's block. So this is released immediately in this situation. This last attacker's block is released immediately. So everybody mines on it, right? So from some 0 dash, you always go to state 0. And let's look at this situation where he gets a lead of 1. So here the state has become 2 because the lead is 2. But when the honest miner generates a block, he's 1 behind, and the state becomes so actually okay, it's a little bit tricky. So in this situation, the attacker is going to release both his blocks, so we are going to go to state 0. Okay, so he releases the private chain and state becomes 0. Okay. In this situation, let's say he's got a lead of 4 and the attacker is catching up. So here the state is 4, and then the attacker generated this block. So let me just write it down here. State is 4, there's a lead of 4. So here the state, I'll just write S for state. The state has become 3 because the attacker has caught up to 1 behind. And then the state has become 2 because the honest miners have caught up to 2 behind. But then the attacker has generated 2 more blocks, so the state went to 3 here and the state became 4 over here. Again he took a lead of 4, and then the attacker got a lead of 3 and he got a lead of he got a lead of 3 over here, got a lead of 2, and then the state would have become 1, but we want to avoid that situation because state 1 is not good. So when this happens, when this last block is created, what the attacker does is he immediately releases the chain. Okay, when this happens, he releases the chain and the state becomes 0. Okay. So if you have a lead of 2 or greater and the honest chain catches up to 1 behind, you immediately release your chain and then the state becomes 0 again. Okay. So state 1 is a sort of a peculiar situation, and that happens only over here, okay, only in this particular scenario. Yeah, otherwise we jump from our higher state. Whenever we reach state 2 and the attacker catches up to 1 behind, we immediately release our chain and jump to state 0. Okay. So here, of course, a trivial case, here obviously the state is again 0 because everybody is mining on the same block. So let's do the analysis. So we are in state 0, and with probability alpha, the attacker generates a block and we are in state 1. Okay. And of course we might go to state 2, okay, where if the attacker generates another block, and if he's just having a field day and he's really lucky, he goes to state 3 and so on. Okay, and this goes all the way up to infinity, right? He could have, in theory, he could have an infinite lead. And whenever we are in a particular state where I have a particular lead, the honest chain could win. The honest miners might generate a block, and that happens with probability 1 minus alpha. Okay, so honest miners have this fraction of the hashing power. Okay, so chances of their winning the next block is 1 minus alpha, okay, just using the same ideas that we had in the double spend analysis. So chances that we go from 3 to 2 is 1 minus alpha. In case we are in state 2 and the honest miner generates a block, the entire chain is released and we go to 0. Okay, this is where the attacker's chain is released. Okay. So whenever we have a lead of 2 or more, this is what happens. We keep going as much and then we reduce, we come down, and then finally the entire chain is released. Now what if we are in state 1 and the honest miners generate a particular block? So we said we'll call this 0 dash, this is the special state, and we jump here with probability 1 minus alpha. And now we said we are always going to 0. There's no matter what happens. But of course there were 3 scenarios for us to go from 0 dash to 0. One was where the attacker generates a block on his own block. Okay, and so let's say that happens with probability alpha. Okay, and what might happen is that the honest miners generate a block on their own block, and that happens with probability 1 minus gamma times 1 minus alpha. So that is the hashing power. So just recall, what we had was a situation like this. This is the situation we have. And the three scenarios we had to look at were like this: B, B, and A. Okay, the chance of this winning is alpha, because there's alpha hashing power over here. Chances of this block getting generated is 1 minus gamma times 1 minus alpha. This is the fraction of hashing power on this block. And here, of course, we have the remaining honest hashing. So this gamma is giving us some flexibility. It depends on the network delay and so on. And we can look at different gammas, and we can see how much advantage the attacker has. Of course, if gamma is equal to 1, then that's the best for the attacker. That means that his block in this situation reaches all the honest miners before the honest block itself. Okay? But in practice, of course, gammas would be something between 0 and 1. Okay? So in this middle scenario, the chances of winning is gamma times 1 minus alpha, right? And so each of them has a particular reward which we've already calculated. So we said that in this particular let's see, in the situation, this particular situation, the attacker gets 2. I'll just say A is equal to 2 over here, and here in this situation A is equal to 1. Okay, because that's this situation, one of his blocks and he gets 1, and here of course he gets 0 because the top chain wins. But the honest get 2 blocks here, the honest get 1 block here, and the honest get 0 blocks here, right? Depending on which of these branches wins. Okay. So what about over here? So let's look at the other situation. We have to essentially say how much reward we are getting on each of these. So in this situation where the attacker always has a lead of 2 or more, every time he gets a block, he gets 1 block in the chain, right? So each of these jumps guarantees him 1 block in the chain. Okay, so when I say A is equal to a certain number, it means that many blocks are getting into the main chain when this event occurs. Okay, so A is equal to 1 and so on, right? What about in these situations? The honest miner has generated a block when the attacker has a good lead. So the honest miners are getting 0 over here. Even though they've generated a block, it's not going to get into the final chain. And of course the attacker too doesn't get any new block into the chain. He hasn't generated anything. So nobody gets a reward in this situation when we make this jump in the Markov chain. Okay. What about the situation here? So when the attacker has a lead of 2 and he releases blocks, he is going to get 2 blocks into the chain. Even though the honest miner has generated 1 block, it's not going to get into the chain, and 2 of the attacker's blocks get into the chain. Okay. So you need to ponder a little bit about these numbers I've written. Okay, so of course here he's releasing the entire chain. So you might wonder, why am I putting only 2 here? And so the reason is because the other blocks in the chain, the other attacker blocks which were in his private chain, have already been counted over here. Okay, as the chain was increasing in length. Right? it's only that two of them were not counted, and those two I'm counting over here. Okay, so you can think about it. Of course, Sirer and Eyal analyze their attacks slightly differently. They actually do something else. They release one block every time when the honest people generate blocks. Okay, so they give the attacker some reward on this lower part of the chain. Okay, of course, but that makes it a little bit trickier to see what's happening. So I'm doing it differently. So if the attacker has a lead, so let's say that this was the block that he was mining on. So he's generated a lot of these blocks. Okay, so let's say that he reached, okay, how much were we? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we reached 6 over here. But I have given him a reward only of 1 on a few of these. So I gave him a reward of, okay, maybe just to simplify matters, let's say that he's over here, okay, he's reached this particular stage, he's at lead 4. I have given him a reward for these 2 blocks. I have given him only a reward of 2 over here, because I've given him a reward here and here. And when, let's say that the honest miners caught up, okay, so we came down to lead of 3, came down to a lead of 2. I haven't given either of them any reward. But now when the honest miner catches up to 1 behind, that's when we make this jump, he releases his entire chain, and now I'm giving him an extra reward of 2. Okay, and so he gets a reward for all his blocks. Okay, so that's how I'm counting it. Okay, and let's see for this situation. Okay, okay. So I think we've taken rewards into account for each of these jumps. Now what we have to do is we have to analyze the Markov chain itself, and we have to find the steady state probabilities of being in any particular state. Okay. So what is the probability that we reach state 2, probability of being in state 3, and so on. Okay, so this is a discrete time Markov chain. We are not exactly looking at exponential distributions and seeing when in time it occurs. It's just like a coin flip experiment. Chances of the attacker winning are alpha, and chances of the honest winning is 1 minus alpha. Okay, so we have a discrete time Markov chain, and we just have to analyze what's the probability of being in different states, and we are given these transition probabilities which I have shown. So this is a straightforward analysis, and let me just write that now. So it's a discrete time Markov chain, and we want to know probability of being in different states. So let me write that down again. We have 0 dash 0, 1, 2, 3, and so on. And we have these transition probabilities. So how do we analyze this sort of a situation? So one trick to analyze this sort of situation is to actually cut this Markov chain, cut the graph into 2 parts. Okay, so I'm going to sort of cut this into 2 parts, for example, over here. Okay. And what happens? So now we are looking at steady state. So the flow over here in both directions should be the same. Okay, so we are not going to go into the deep theory of Markov chain, but intuitively you can think about it. You have to be getting past this point in the chain the same amount you're getting past this way, right, in a steady state. So what is the flow sort of from this side to that side, where it's P3, the probability of being in state 3, multiplied by alpha, that is the forward flow, is equal to P4 times 1 minus alpha. Okay, so we've got one equation over here already. Okay? That's a good idea, and it's true for any of these cuts. So we can say that Pk times alpha is equal to 1 minus alpha times Pk plus 1. And this is true for all k greater than or equal to 2. Okay, so because here everything looks the same. Right? So we've got lots of equations. That's good for us. This part of the graph looks a little bit tricky. So we jump from here to here with probability 1 minus alpha. We jump here with probability 1 minus alpha. Okay. And let's see. What I didn't say over here is also that we actually can jump from 0 to itself when the honest person generates a block. That was the simplest situation which we looked at earlier. Both attacker and honest were mining on the same block, and the honest miners generated a block. Okay, so we have this situation 1 minus alpha, and here of course we jump with probability 1. But it's just to calculate the rewards, we'll have to split this up, right? But effectively here we go with probability 1. Okay? We always go from 0 dash to 0. Okay? But in 3 different scenarios, and for each of these 3 we have a different reward for the attacker and the honest man. Okay, but right now we are not trying to calculate the rewards. Okay, so we are just trying to calculate the steady state probability. So let's just stick to probability 1 from going from 0 dash to 0. Okay. So let's look at this right now. So we need to do some more cuts over here. So let's do a cut across from here. Okay, let's try to do a cut over here. So what is the flow going over here? So it is P1 times 1 minus alpha, and okay, so flow going here P plus P2 times 1 minus alpha, that is the reverse sort of flow, backward flow. So here to this is the backward flow. And of course we have a forward flow too, and that should be equal to P0 times alpha. These 3 should be balanced. Okay. And what is remaining is this probability of being in 0 dash. What is the steady state probability there of being in that particular state? So we have to do another cut. So let's do a cut this way in the graph. Okay, so what is the, let's say the forward, let's call this the forward or outward sort of flow. So P0 dash multiplied by 1, okay, that is probability of going this way across the cut, and that should be equal to the probability, the sort of flow going the other way. So P1 times 1 minus alpha. Okay, so those need to be balanced, and these are all the equations that we need, and we can use them to solve for the various probabilities. So the steady state probabilities can be calculated. And Gunsirer and others do the calculations for us, so they get these probabilities. I'll just write them down. I'll put the link on Moodle, or I can even upload the paper so that you can access it. Okay, and P0 dash is given by this quantity. Okay, so we just have to solve those equations. And 1 minus 4 alpha square plus 2 alpha cube and P1. So the denominator has this factor 1 minus 4 alpha square plus 2 alpha cube, and for all k greater than or equal to 2, we have a formula for this steady state probability. It's alpha by 1 minus alpha times k minus 1, alpha minus 2 alpha square by this same term 1 minus 4 alpha square plus 2 alpha. So these are the steady state probabilities, and once we have these probabilities, we just have to put some rewards related to the various transitions like we saw here, right? So we are saying what are the rewards every time we make these jumps, and we can use that to calculate how many of the attacker's blocks get in, how many of the honest blocks get in. Okay. So I'll just tell you what we get. So let's look at rewards. So what he calls in the paper R pool. So he is assuming that all the attackers are part of the same mining pool. Okay, so this pool refers to the attacker. Okay, so this is the ratio of attackers. So if you look at a large time window, so it's the ratio of attackers blocks which enter the final chain. Okay. So this is the ratio of this quantity to the total number of blocks generated okay, and this is in a large time interval. Okay, so let's say that I'm looking at a large time interval 0 to t, and let's say that the number of attackers blocks, total number of attackers blocks generated let's say is A0, and the number of attackers blocks which get into the chain let's say is A, and similarly let's say that the total number of honest blocks generated is B0. Okay, let's use the same notation. Let's just say that we have, let's say, H0, and number of honest blocks which enter the main chain H. Okay, So what R pool is giving us, it's giving us the A divided by the total number of blocks generated, so that's going to be A0 plus H0. Okay, and similarly we have our others, which is just essentially going to be equal to H divided by A0 plus H0. Okay, so this is the term that he uses in the paper, so I'm just using the same thing, but this is essentially telling you the rate of the honest blocks which get into the chain. Okay, so this is in some large time interval t. Okay, and of course as this is sort of the expected number of blocks for a particular t, and as if t gets really large, then of course in every realization you would get something close to these, close to the expected value actually getting into the chain. Okay. So he calculates what these are, I'll write those down, but what we really want is the fraction of blocks, honest blocks in the chain, or which eventually wins, and the fraction of the attacker's blocks in the chain. So what we want is A divided by A plus H and H divided by A plus H. And what is this is equal to? This is equal to R pool divided by R pool plus R others. Right, so you can see that that's what we get, and the honest miner's reward per unit time is going to be R others divided by the same denominator. Okay, so the Markov chain is going to give us, the Markov chain calculation is going to give us these, because we are looking at all blocks in the Markov chain, including those which are thrown out from the chain. Right? They are all included when we make jumps here and there. Okay, so what Gunserer and Itai Eyal calculate, they get our others to be equal to P0 dash. Okay, so you can look at the various jumps. This is when the honest miners get a block into the chain. Okay, plus, so maybe let's look at the chain. So where do the honest miners get any blocks? So here they get some blocks, right? They get blocks over here. They get blocks here. So the honest gets one block, attacker gets nothing over here. Right? So here they get one block, here for this particular jump they get two blocks. Right, and let's see, here in this situation they get only one block. Okay. Oh, sorry, I need to actually circle the other one. Anyway, so this is the one I should have circled, where they get one block. Okay, so there are three situations where the honest people get any blocks. And the cases where the attacker gets blocks are over here, all these ones in the top jumps, where we jump with probability alpha, right? So here we get something, here we get two blocks, here we get two blocks, here we get one block, right? So there are various cases where the attacker gets blocks, but first let's write down what the honest people get. So when we are in state P0, we could get also two blocks in certain situations. Okay, that's where we have this. And when we are in state 0 and the honest miners get a block, that happens with probability 1 minus alpha, and we get reward 1. Okay, so this last quantity which I have written over here is the reward. The number of blocks of the honest miner which get into the chain. And our pool, there are 4 cases which you'll have to refer back to that case. So P0 times alpha times 2, you could get 2 blocks. P0 dash times gamma times 1 minus alpha. Okay. This is where he gets 1 block. And also let's see, P, he's in state 2 and he gets reward 2. So let me just write that down, show that over here. So this last term which I wrote corresponds to this jump over here from 2 to 0. Right? He was in state 2 and with probability 1 minus alpha he gets 2 blocks, he gets reward 2. And then we have to look at those top jumps, the top transitions. So from probability I greater than or equal to 2, okay, he gets with probability alpha he jumps to the next state and he gets reward 1. Okay. So Gunserer did this analysis a little bit differently. So he has a different quantity. I just write that down. So it's equivalent in fact. So he says probability of I strictly greater than 2 1 minus alpha multiplied by 1. Okay, and you can look at the equations and see that these two quantities are the same. Okay, so he solves for all of this and finally he gets our pool, which is nothing but our pool is defined as the ratio of these. That's our pool. So this is nothing but A divided by A plus 8. So this is telling us the fraction of attacker blocks in the winning chain. This is really what we are after, and this is the quantity they get. Okay. 1 plus 2 minus alpha times alpha. Okay, so these all these formulas are given in the paper, right? And we can actually plug in values of gamma and alpha. So recall that alpha is the fraction of attacker's mining power, gamma is the fraction of honest miners who see the attacker's block before their own block. Okay, even when they've created a block, there's a competing chain. Let's say both release their blocks at roughly the same time, and which fraction of honest miners actually see the attacker's block first. Okay. So this is that gamma. Okay. So we can calculate this for different values of alpha and gamma and see what happens. So let us draw the graph of R pool versus alpha. Okay, so the average fraction of blocks which the attacker gets into the chain, that's R pool, versus his fraction of mining power. Okay. So this is what they get from plugging in different values of alpha and gamma. So let's say it's 0.1, 0.2, 0.3, 0.3, 0.4, 0.5, and let's just mark 0.2 here, 0.4, 0.6, 1.0. So the y is equal to x sort of line is going to be here. So roughly it's going to look like this. Okay, y equal to x line. And if everybody, if the attacker was honest, this is what his reward would be. He would get a reward proportional to alpha. Okay. But what if he's performs the attack and let's say gamma is equal to 0. Let's see. So now he's performing the selfish mining attack, and here at 0.2 roughly he gets 0.1. So interestingly, if he performs the attack and he has 20% of the hashing power, he actually gets less than what he would. And with 30% or so, he's getting a little less than what he would. And with about 33%, he's actually getting what he would otherwise, right, if he was honest. And you can imagine what happens when he has 50% of the hashing power. In that situation, he always gets all the blocks in the chain. So why is that? Because if he has more than 50% of the hashing power, he can pretty much kill any honest block in the chain. He just has to generate a long private chain and he just kills all the honest blocks. So only his blocks get into the final chain and he gets the entire reward. So our pool becomes 1. Okay, so that's to be expected. So when gamma is 0, roughly we get something which looks like this. And at this situation where alpha is equal to 0.3, if he has more hashing power than 1/3, then he is actually going to get more blocks into the chain, a more higher fraction of his blocks into the chain than if he was honest. Okay? So in case gamma is equal to 0, which means that in the situation when you have, this was the situation where the attacker had a block and the honest people also had a block, it means that all the honest miners mine on the honest one, that none of them receive this attacker block over it, right? So this was the situation where gamma is equal to 0. So all the honest mine over here. Yeah. So in practice, of course, gamma is going to be between 0 and 1, but let's see what happens when gamma is equal to 1. Here it turns out that the attacker always gets more if he performs the selfish mining attack. Okay, so if it's 0.2, he gets a little bit more than 0.2, and similarly 0.3 is roughly gets something closer to 0.4, and so on. So the graph looks a little bit like this. And this is the situation where all the honest miners, the entire hashing power is on the honest miner's block, in the attacker's block. Everybody mines on his block, and so his block is always good. So in this particular situation, we see that it's always beneficial for the attacker to perform the selfish mining attack, okay, in case gamma is equal to 1. So it really depends on what gamma is. I mean, so if gamma is actually equal to 1, meaning that the attacker is able to send a block immediately to everybody else before the honest minus block gets to everybody else, then it makes sense for him to perform the attack. Okay, but definitely we can say that if he has higher than 33% of the mining power, it always makes sense for the attacker to perform this selfish mining attack. Okay? Because even if gamma is 0, he's always going to get a higher fraction of blocks into the chain. Okay, so this is all about the selfish mining attack, and the attacker has to take a call, and so we have to be worried. Suppose there is a mining pool which has more than 33% of the mining power, then quite likely he is going to perform the attack. Right? So the Bitcoin miners, of course, ensure that none of them, no mining pool has more than a very large fraction. Okay, so that's just so that people don't lose confidence in the Bitcoin mining system. Okay, so we look at other topics beyond proof of work starting from the next class.